Don't forget to like and share this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and sign up to stay updated with our latest content. It was just after midnight when I heard it, a knock so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. The house was still, wrapped in the kind of silence that only comes deep in the night. Outside, the wind barely stirred the trees, and inside I sat curled up on the couch, a cup of tea cooling beside me and a book resting loosely in my hands. Then came the knock again, slightly louder this time, hesitant, like someone who wasn't sure if they should be there. I set the cup down, heart picking up pace. It wasn't fear exactly, just that strange creeping feeling when something interrupts the expected rhythm of your night. I glanced at the clock. 12:15 a.m. No one knocks at that hour, not unless something is wrong. I walked slowly toward the door, every step filled with uncertainty. My mind raced through the possibilities. A neighbor in trouble, a mistake, a stranger. But when I opened the door, it wasn't a stranger. It was Nathan, my neighbor. We'd known each other for years in the way neighbors often do, waving across driveways, exchanging short conversations about the weather or the garden. He was kind, steady, always composed. But tonight, he looked different. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, shirt slightly wrinkled, hair a bit tousled, and his eyes, they held something I couldn't quite name. Worry, exhaustion, or maybe something deeper. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know it's late, I just didn't know where else to go." For a moment, I just stared at him, not because I was upset, but because something about the way he stood there made me realize this wasn't casual. This was someone reaching out at his most vulnerable. And without a word, I stepped aside and opened the door wider. Nathan stepped inside slowly, like someone unsure if he was truly welcome, though I hadn't hesitated to let him in. The soft light from the living room lamps cast long shadows across the walls, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy, full of things unsaid. I motioned toward the couch. "Have a seat," I said gently. He nodded and sat down, his movements deliberate, like every action took effort. I watched as he folded his hands, then unfolded them, then folded them again. Whatever had brought him here was clearly not easy to talk about. "I'm sorry," he began after a moment, his voice quiet, almost hoarse. "I know this is strange. I wouldn't show up like this if it weren't important." I sat down beside him, still unsure what to say, but sensing he needed space to speak more than he needed answers. "I've just been having a rough time," he continued, his eyes still avoiding mine. "And tonight I didn't know where else to go. I didn't want to be alone, and you came to mind." The way he said it, so simply, without expectation, moved something in me. He wasn't asking for anything specific, just a place to breathe, a space to not carry whatever it was alone. "There's no need to apologize," I said softly. "You're here now. That's what matters." He looked at me then, really looked, and I could see the vulnerability in his expression. It was raw, unfiltered, and in that moment I realized this wasn't just about a bad day or a fleeting moment of loneliness. This was deeper. "I'm just tired," he whispered. "Tired of pretending I'm okay when I'm not." That's when I knew this wasn't just a visit, it was a turning point. Nathan sat silently for a moment, as if weighing whether or not to continue. I didn't press him. I could sense he was working through something bigger than words, something he had likely buried for far too long. Finally, he took a deep breath. "There's something I've been carrying," he said, his voice low and measured. "And I think I just need to say it out loud, not to get an answer, not to make it your problem. But because if I don't say it, I think I might keep breaking a little more every day." I felt my chest tighten. There was a gravity in his tone that told me we were stepping into unfamiliar territory, uncharted and fragile. "I've been feeling something," he went on, "something I've been trying to push away. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it or that it didn't matter, but it never went away." He turned to face me then, his eyes searching mine with a quiet desperation. "It's you," he said. "It's been you." The words hit me like a soft wave, unexpected but undeniable. "I know this must come out of nowhere," he added quickly, "and I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I never meant to complicate things between us. But I couldn't keep pretending anymore, not with you." His eyes were vulnerable, exposed, and completely honest. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't demanding I feel the same. He was simply offering me his truth. "I don't know what I expect to come from this," he said, almost as a whisper. "Maybe nothing. But it's been there, these feelings, and I needed you to know, even if nothing changes. I just couldn't hold it inside any longer." I sat there, stunned. My heart pounded with a strange rhythm, surprise, confusion, and something else I couldn't yet name. And in the quiet that followed, I realized we were no longer just two neighbors sitting in a dimly lit room. We had stepped into something deeper, something real. I stared at him, his words still hanging in the air like mist, soft yet impossible to ignore. "It's you." I tried to respond, but the words caught somewhere in my throat. What could I say to something so unexpected? My heart raced, my mind scrambled. I wasn't frightened, but I was shaken. There was no warning, no gradual shift. Just this, raw, sincere, and completely unfiltered. "Nathan, I started, but the sentence fell apart before I could finish it. I looked away, needing a moment to collect myself. My emotions were tangled, a flicker of fear, a touch of warmth, confusion, and something unfamiliar that I wasn't ready to name. He didn't interrupt. He sat quietly, hands resting in his lap, eyes full of patience. There was no pressure, no demand, just him and the truth he had laid bare. I turned back to him. "I didn't see this coming," I admitted softly. "I've always thought of you as steady, kind, a neighbor I trusted. But this, what you just said, it changes things." He nodded slowly, his expression calm despite the vulnerability he had just revealed. "I'm not saying it's a bad thing," I added quickly. I don't know how I feel yet. I need time to process all of this." "I understand," he said gently. "I wasn't expecting you to have an answer tonight, or any answer at all, really. I just needed to be honest, for my own peace." There was something profoundly moving in the way he respected my hesitation. He wasn't trying to convince me. He simply wanted me to know. And maybe that was the most unselfish kind of love. "I don't want to lose what we have," I whispered, "even if I can't figure this out right away." "You won't," he said. "Just don't shut me out." His voice was quiet, but it landed with weight. And in that moment, I realized the decision wouldn't be about whether I felt the same right away, but whether I was willing to explore what this could become. And I wasn't ready to walk away from that. The days that followed felt strangely suspended, as if time had softened its pace just enough to let me think. Everything on the outside remained unchanged. My routines, my quiet mornings, the hum of the neighborhood. But inside, something had shifted. Nathan's words echoed in my mind at the oddest moments. While I made tea, while I trimmed the plants on my windowsill, while I tried to focus on my book but kept rereading the same paragraph. I replayed that night over and over again, the hesitation in his voice, the way he couldn't meet my eyes at first, the quiet courage it took to say what he said. It wasn't just about the confession. It was about how deeply he'd been holding it in, how long he'd waited to speak. And as I thought about him, I began to see things differently. There were signs, weren't there? The way he always seemed to remember the small details, how I took my coffee, which flowers I liked, the warmth in his smile whenever our paths crossed, the way he lingered a little longer in conversation, even if we were just talking about the weather. I started to wonder if I'd overlooked something, not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't ready to consider it. Every time I saw him now, even from a distance, a quiet tension filled the air. Not uncomfortable, but expectant, like we were both waiting for the other to take one more step forward. And somewhere deep inside, I could feel it beginning, the possibility of something more. It was a quiet evening when I finally made my decision. The kind of evening where the sky held that soft, lingering light just before dusk, and the world seemed to exhale. I stood in front of my mirror, unsure of what I was even preparing for. My reflection looked calm, but my heart betrayed me, racing, uncertain, alive. I had gone back and forth all week telling myself I needed more time, that maybe the moment had passed. But the truth was, I wasn't waiting for the right moment. I was waiting for courage. And that evening, I found it. I walked to Nathan's house slowly, each step heavy with thought. What would I say? What if he had changed his mind? What if I still didn't have all the answers? But when I reached his doorstep, I didn't hesitate. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately, as if he'd been nearby. When he saw me, his eyes widened, not in surprise, but in something gentler, hope maybe, or relief. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and careful. "Everything okay?" I nodded, then hesitated for only a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking," I said, "a lot, about that night, about us." He didn't interrupt. He just listened. His silence was steady, and it gave me the space I needed. "I didn't know how to process what you said," I continued. "It caught me off guard, but I've realized something." I stepped a little closer, searching his eyes for reassurance, and found it there, quietly waiting. "The truth is, I've been feeling something too. I just didn't know how to name it. I was afraid of what it might mean, afraid it would change everything, but not saying it doesn't make it go away." He said nothing, just looked at me with that open, patient expression. "I care about you, Nathan," I whispered, "more than I expected to, and I don't want to pretend I don't." There, I'd said it, my truth finally spoken aloud. And in his eyes, I saw it mirrored back, not just acceptance, but something more, a beginning. Nathan didn't respond with words right away. Instead, he took a small step forward and gently reached for my hands. His touch was warm, steady, reassuring in a way I hadn't realized I needed. He didn't squeeze or hold tight. It was a gesture of quiet connection, of presence. His eyes held mine with such softness, such understanding, that I felt myself breathe a little easier. "I've been hoping," he said after a long pause, his voice low and filled with emotion. "But I never wanted to put that on you. I just needed you to know how I felt. And now that I do, I just want us to take whatever steps feel right. No expectations, no pressure. I felt the weight I had been carrying ease a little more. It wasn't about rushing into something new or redefining our relationship overnight. It was about acknowledging what was already there, gently, truthfully, and with care. "I'm not sure where this will lead," I said honestly. "I don't want to move too fast or label something I'm still learning to feel, but I don't want to walk away from it either. I want to be open. I want to see where this can go with you." Nathan's smile then, small, sincere, and almost shy, was everything I needed to see. Not a triumphant smile, but one of quiet relief. "I'm okay with slow," he said. "I'm okay with figuring it out as we go, as long as we're honest." We moved to the couch, sitting side by side like we had before. But this time, the space between us wasn't filled with uncertainty. It was filled with possibility and peace. No grand declarations, no dramatic promises, just the beginning of something that felt real. Grounded in truth, rooted in mutual care, and that, I realized, was more than enough. The days that followed were soft, unhurried, like the calm after a long-awaited rain. Nathan and I didn't rush into anything. There were no sudden changes, no sweeping gestures, just small, meaningful moments that quietly wove a new kind of connection between us. Sometimes we'd share a morning coffee on the porch without needing to fill the silence. Other times we'd exchange a glance across our yards, a simple look that said, "I see you, I'm here." It wasn't flashy, it wasn't romantic in the way the movies often show, but it was real, and it was enough. Each interaction carried a tenderness I hadn't noticed before, a gentler kind of attention. He'd ask how I was, not out of habit, but because he genuinely wanted to know. I found myself listening more closely, caring more deeply. The walls between us had begun to shift, not because we tore them down, but because we stopped pretending they needed to be there. I still didn't have all the answers. There were moments when doubt crept in, when I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if I was strong enough to open my heart again. But every time I looked at Nathan, I saw a reflection of that same hesitation and that same hope, and that made all the difference. What we had wasn't built on passion alone. It was built on something steadier, on trust, on patience, on the willingness to let something grow without trying to force it into bloom. One evening, as we sat quietly watching the sky fade into night, Nathan reached for my hand and held it gently in his. No words were spoken, none were needed. In that stillness, I realized this was the beginning of a new chapter, one I hadn't planned for, one I never expected. But perhaps the best parts of life happen exactly that way. And in the quiet comfort of that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace and the simple, beautiful truth that it's never too late to start again. Sometimes life doesn't need grand events to change us. A quiet knock at midnight, a moment of honesty, can be enough to open a new chapter we never expected. This story between two neighbors reminds us that no matter our age, genuine emotion still deserves to be felt, shared, and honored. It's easy to believe that love, connection, or new beginnings are only for the young. But the truth is, what matters most is not how much time we have left, but how we choose to live it, with honesty, with courage, with open hearts. Whether it's friendship, love, or something in between, relationships built on sincerity, patience, and mutual respect can bring warmth and meaning to our lives, especially when we least expect it. So don't be afraid to feel again. Don't be afraid to speak your truth. Give yourself permission to care, to hope, and to begin, no matter how long it's been, because sometimes the most beautiful parts of our lives arrive quietly, long after we thought the story was already written. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comments one insight you gained and how you plan to apply it in your life. Your feedback is invaluable and keeps us motivated. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support enables us to continue creating content that informs and inspires. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.